because it is, it is something that is not possible in a real-world camera. So, at least in the functionality of the real-world cameras that are being used primarily for production currently now. So, that is something that we are planning to implement, just not in our first pass. So what we've done in the first pass is we replaced all the math behind the scenes so that we can implement these kinds of rigs. We've added the convergence rig. We have added the OpenGL display of anaglyph. We've added the display of the cameras so that you can actually see the rig. You can do dynamic eye separation or interocular. You can do dynamic convergence point and zero parallax. So that if your shots change, like if someone's running towards camera or whatever, some action's happening, you can control where the stereo effect is happening. That's absolutely imperative. It's the only way that the stereo effect in Avatar, for example, is able to be perceivable with all of that action happening is that, Chuck Comiskey would sit there and, the visual effects supervisor, stereoscopic supervisor on the film would call the dynamic convergence and interocular in the scene. Within the scene. If you can't do that, before LightWave, you just set one value of eye separation, and that was it. That's all you had, and it's like ridiculous. So we fixed all of that. When you go into the stereoscopic rig, you just check it on, and when you check on use convergence point, it changes it to the convergent rig. Okay? So from that point on, it's a convergent rig. It activates your convergent point settings, which you can set envelopes there and animate dynamically both of those. Obviously, tie them with expressions or whatever you want to do to those channels. And also in the past, to render anaglyph, which some people want to do. Because if you don't check on render anaglyph, it's going to render just right and left eye, just automatically, which is what normally you want to do in production. So let's go over and see. Oh, I loaded up my other scene. Well, before we show you the stereoscopic, I'm going to jump in and show you the jungle thing, because that's kind of cool too. I'm giving you a little bit of extra today, because this is the LightWave YouTube. Okay, so here we are. And one of the things that's interesting about this is if you go into our GL settings, one of the things you'll notice is that there's an alpha clipping setting now. In LightWave, there never was an alpha clipping setting. One of the reasons why Motion Builder is so fast is because they clip alphas. If there's a transparency in a scene, you basically have the alpha channel be on or off, and it speeds things up massively. Because if you don't, it's a gradient of, transparency values that has to calculate multiple levels of that. So what that allows us to do is have this in LightWave, moving through the OpenGL in LightWave, and you could never move through something like this complex before with these devices. So if you set this up, and obviously my transparency channel now would come through correctly, but I don't know why that is. But this is a scene that was also set up. And all these objects were rendered and modeled and set up in LightWave. But you see how fluid it is for me to move through this? It's really a fun thing. So you can think about when you're doing virtual set walkthroughs and all that. We set all this up in LightWave, rendered the objects and baked all the textures in, and then dispersed them via scripting, Python scripting in Motion Builder to create and populate this environment. Now with our new FBX tools, I simply loaded that FBX scene, which is thousands of objects, thousands of transparency channels with UV maps and texture maps into LightWave, and it looks exactly like it did in Motion Builder. And the other thing we added, which is really cool, is we're in perspective mode now, and you'll notice there's fog in perspective mode. So you have, in your options panel, you have the ability to inherit in the display channels, let's see, you can inherit your fog from, if you have your camera setting, if you have your the regular window that you would go to, the volumetrics window, if you have it set to linear here, but if I want to change those values, see how it's changing that fog in the scene? So you never had in a perspective view before, which is a non-camera centric camera view actually, it's just like non-camera tied. But you now have the atmospheric, and atmospherics are so important if you're moving through volumes because they give you cues as to size and scale. And that's one of the cool things about these are just little refinements that aren't even mentioned really, in some of the other on the website and all that. But this is stuff that's been put in there to enhance this kind of stuff. Now let's go. Let's clear this.
Well, how many polys in that scene?
Let's just see. In our trying to see where my 78,000, and there's 167 images and 38 megs of memory, Surfaces are 721. You know.
So if you were to enable VPR on that, it would be.
Well, I don't know what would happen.
It doesn't
Not horrible.
Okay.
I'm probably not tracing my transparency. So if I go into render globals and turn on my render transparency, ray trace transparency, it'll probably change that. So you can turn all that on, and then it'll be showing the transparencies with the fog. So, you know, it's not horrible, but I guess it's going to take a little while to iterate that.
So the nuances you get with that controller, you can like link that to a camera right now and be able to capture that in the scene as your
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, there is a whole, if you go to Virtual Studio here, see that tab? There's a whole interface for this.
Okay.
So you have things like, we're going to work on some of the workflow of this because I'm not completely happy with this yet. That's why I'm not demoing it to you right this minute because it works. I'm just not happy with some of the naming conventions that we have. Characters can be misleading because the camera is actually a character.
Okay.
So if you set your camera, you add the characters, and there's tracks and takes. Just like you would do in Motion Builder, you can do multiple takes and keep them. So if you want to record right now with LightWave 10, you can do this. You can set up your camera and record multiple takes of the move that you're doing, and then you've got that take. You turn it on and off, and you've got that camera move saved. And you can jump between different recorded camera moves. It's awesome. It's just that it's confusing now with the current naming, and I'm not happy fully with the implementation. You guys could play with it and probably easily figure it out pretty quickly, but I just thought it was confusing to our user base, and that's why I'm trying to work on refining this just a little bit more. So the functionality is basically not going to change tremendously. It's going to be, the workflow is going to be refined, so this is extremely clear. Because it is, all it simply is you're mapping something to the controller. You're able to record motion channels from that, and that can be, you know, whatever. It could be a light, it could be a camera, it could be whatever. So that is how it's fairly. This is the foundation of our more advanced virtual studio system is coming.
Cool.
Essentially, but you can do a lot with it already. It's just we're not fully. I didn't want to put a whole bunch of tutorials and information out there because I'm going to be changing the names of the workflow of this stuff. So, let's see here. Let me load the stereoscopic since everybody's got their glasses on. So before we implemented the alpha clipping, if you tried to put this OpenGL scene in through, it would just, there's no way that it would have been able to have any acceptable speed whatsoever interactively. So that's a pretty nice addition. It's a really simple one. It was just that it's never been implemented. And I'm like, and they're like, well, Motion Builder is so much faster. I said, well, you know why Motion Builder is fast? Because it's like on or off. It's like transparent or not. That's all it is. It's actually not the greatest display render engine. We didn't even have lights fall off when we started on Avatar. Can you imagine doing cave scenes with campfires and stuff with no light fall off? I mean, come on, please. Okay, so here is our stereoscopic display. And you can see in the stereo panel we've got it checked on, but no convergence reoccurring. So this is the parallel rig. This is similar to what was implemented in LightWave before. You can see there are the representations of cameras. Now, with this setting, the only way you control the effect is if you change the interocular and the eye separation. See what's happening? When I'm changing that and adjusting that dynamically, you see how he's moving in or out of the screen? It's still kind of a guessing game because you don't really have a representation other than the anaglyph. So if we turn on, and 70 millimeters is what it defaults to, that's the average distance between, the interocular distance between the human eyes. So if you turn on the convergence rig, you're going to see that there's a convergence plane and point there now. So if I change my values now, it's kind of hard, this screen is a little squashed for you to see everything, but you're going to see when I change the convergence point, he is going to be popping out of the screen right now, above the plane. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, and now, I don't even have the glasses on, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. He's going to be going and recessing back into the screen because I'm moving the convergent plane in front of him. So you see that convergent point gives you a lot of great information. In addition to this, you can manage the interocular, the distance between the cameras as well, and animate both of those as necessary. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because you're going to have action in the scene that is, that warrants it because a character or some device is moving towards screen. But the reason why you want to change interocular, I mean, it's clear why you want to change convergence, because if the thing that you're focusing on is moving in Z-space, you want to track it. But why would you change interocular? If the human eye is 70 millimeter, why would you want to change that? The reason why is because if you're in your movie, you're playing, if it's ants or Bugs Life, and their bug scale, when they're on the beach, pebbles of sand are going to look like giant stones. And so obviously the distance between a bug's eyes is much smaller than ours. So if you take that to the next level, that's a real simple form of it. But what the next level is as an artist, you're evaluating what scale this scene should be evaluated at. Are we moving through this as a giant perspective of the universe? We're flying through the universe. Well, 70 millimeter probably isn't going to show you any parallax. So you're going to adjust that eye separation as if you're God floating through the universe, and his eyes are going to be pretty big. So you're going to scale that up depending on what it is you're trying, what the effect is you're trying to do. So that's what giving you the choice of having these two tools working in conjunction dynamically will do for the effect. It's a really cool effect. So if, again, in this panel, you used to go into, if you render this now, it would be a right and left eye that would look exactly, like what the right eye camera or the left eye camera is seeing in this. Now, if you, in the past, you had to go apply some filter into the render filters and some other panel and blah, 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 blah. I added it right to the camera panel. So if you check on anaglyph filter, then it will render exactly this anaglyph image that's shown in OpenGL into a rendered and anaglyph render. So if you want to output something anaglyph to the internet, or if you're playing with anaglyph, you can output that very easily, like never before. You don't have to go through and jump through hoops and put all these extra plugins and things in. This automates the process for you. So, and in addition, on the slate is implementing other types of anaglyph colors. The best way to do that currently, and the best way to do it, period, is to render right and left eye and use After Effects or something like that to give you exactly what your client is asking for, and to output exactly what they're asking. Yes?
Will there be a way to output like side by side, upper, lower?
Well, it outputs the full image, and you would have to input, currently we don't have that implemented in ours. We output the full frame image, 1920 by 1080 or whatever you're set to, 4K, right and left images. And then you would load those into your compositing package and have them in whatever template you want. Yeah. And that would be the way that you would output it currently. And that's the professional workflow that everybody does. Right. So because there's so many different, right now it's like the display field for home especially is kind of like, who knows which way it's going to go ultimately. So there are a lot of different formats to support, and the absolute best way to support all of them, if you're rendering a stereoscopic job and you don't know, the best thing to do is to output that right and left eye at full res, because you can take that and do any of the display mechanisms with it. So that's what's been implemented so far, and there's been a lot of changes, with the OpenGL and the full camera matrix math behind it has been changed. It's nothing like what it was before. Before, actually, honestly, it pains me to say this, but the math between what was happening in your OpenGL viewport wasn't even present. So there was no way for you to know what the stereo anaglyph was going to be like. So the stereo anaglyph really had a little bit of difference between what your numbers you were putting in were and what you're seeing. Now what you see in the OpenGL is exactly what you're going to render with anaglyph. And so it gives you a great cue as an artist as to what your stereo effect is going to be. And now with a convergence point, you can set that so easily. When I was showing some people, I was talking to Chuck a couple weeks ago with his group, and showing him some of this stuff, and they were really excited about it because they do. Chuck Comiskey was the supervisor on Avatar that did stereo, and he's working on some audio stereoscopic conversion stuff now. And it's just an interesting part of our industry. Stereoscopic is interesting, and I think now with this implementation in LightWave 10, you have a very easy way to render anything that you're doing in stereo and know exactly what your stereo effect is going to be. So that's a great. In my mind, a great new addition, and it gives you a lot of great new feedback. Okay, so let's pick up from our demo there, and